Hello and welcome to episode 281 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now today's episode for me is probably the biggest episode this year. When I started Mark and Me, it was no secret I made a list of dream guests, and today is another one to tick off. I'm joined by Walter Schreifels, yes, the genius songwriter, guitarist, vocalist, and just all-round awesome guy from Gorilla Biscuits, Quicksand, Youth of Today, and one of my favourite bands of all time, Rival Schools. Saying it out loud doesn't even seem real because I've wanted this to happen for over 5 years. But thanks to my amazing friend Emma Van Dykes, it's finally happened. Yes, he's joining me on today's episode and it's worth the wait. It's such a great interview. Walter for me is one of the reasons I wanted to be in a band. Rival Schools were that band at college that I was obsessed with. United by Fate is easily in my top 5 albums of all time. The band changed my life. So to know this interview is coming up in just a couple of minutes time truly is a dream come true. But before we get there, let's quickly touch base and talk about my last episode. On episode 280, I was joined by the absolute legend John Rhys Davies. A really crazy interview that you could never ever have planned for. It went on all different directions, different subject matters, and it was just crazy. But the response has been amazing. I've seen lots of Indiana Jones fans, so many Lord of the Rings fans listening, and everyone has been feedbacking saying that it's been an amazing interview. So thank you to everyone that listened. And just before I give you the interview with Walter, what I do want to do is give a big shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, Richer Sounds. Without those guys, I couldn't be here today doing this podcast. So if you're in the market for a brand new home cinema system, TV, Sonos, turntable, go on richersounds.com and you won't regret it. But now, let's get to it. Over 5 years in the making, me and Walter, oh my God, it's happening. Pinch yourself because I'm doing it right now. Here it is, me and Walter talking all things music. So Walter, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
It's a pleasure, Mark. Thank you.
Walter, what I like to do to anyone that's tuning in, I'm sure people will know of your work, but what I like to do is take it right back to the very start for the listeners. When you're growing up, maybe you had a part-time job or a paper round or albums got passed down to you. But what was those first albums that you remember that you fell in love with?
The first bunch that I purchased probably were really special to me. I'll show my age a little bit, but the first B-52s album, End of the Century by Ramones, Fine Art of Surfacing, Boomtown Rats, Hatful of Hollow by the Smiths. Closer, Joy Division. These are the kind of like the first albums that I remember like buying with my own money or, acquiring, where it was my taste. It wasn't really like my cousin's musical tastes.
The thing is, you've just picked up some huge names as big foundations to build upon. And I don't know where you really go from there because that's like some of the best albums you could ever name. But what age were you when you were listening to bands like that?
I mean, I was pretty young. Also Blondie were really huge for me, and Adam and the Ants.
Nice.
So would have been like 5th grade, 6th grade. I started, saving up enough money to start buying records, and there was a challenge of like finding what was what you could actually buy at a record store. That was another thing, and I lived in a part of New York City. It's Rockaway Beach, which is a Ramones song, as a matter of fact. But it's not far to reach. It's not true if you're like 12 years old. You can't, once you're there, you can't get off. It's kind of hard to get off if you don't have like a ride. So we didn't have that much access to different record stores. So when I found like B-52's first album, or that Ramones album, like it was amazing to me, that it showed up at this place, because those would have been not really popular records. I don't think, not in my, I mean, I guess B-52's probably was popular, but not in my, like, not in Rockaway Beach, honestly.
Isn't it cool? Like, we're going to sound like two granddads already, but finding those albums. And I remember, I'm not quite as old, but I remember when I was at secondary school and someone gave me Nirvana Nevermind on cassette.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe how good it was. And then someone said, "Go and check out Silverchair," and I was like, "Silverchair, what's that?" And it was literally like impossible to find because there was no internet. You didn't go on Spotify and just find it, or go in Apple Podcasts or any of these different channels. And I found it on cassette in this really like random record store in Wales, and it changed my life. And because I had to save up for it, and it was like $10, I would
Yeah.
listen to it all day, every day. I would read every lyric on the inside of the cassette cover. I would smell it because I'd been like, "This is." Those records had a smell, didn't they? And those CD covers that were just, I don't know. There's something about it that you would be like, "I am making sure that I get my money's worth from this."
It's absolutely true. And then sometimes you get a record that actually maybe has one or two good songs on it, and you would just like make yourself get into the rest of it because it was just too big of an investment
I'll be telling everyone it's a grower. It's fucking shit, but I need to justify spending
I
ten
gotta do
dollars.
it. And another thing you just made me, that's funny. I don't know if you ever, I think nowadays people will do this sometimes. Like, you really want to get a T-shirt of a band at a show or something like that, and they're sold out of your actual size, and then you'll just like buy the next size and just say, "Screw it, I'm just gonna make this work." Um, like that would happen sometimes too, where you couldn't get it on vinyl, so you'd get it on cassette, or the other way around, because you just like needed to have that thing. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a Grampsy conversation to have, but I mean, there's a certain power to anything that is, the chase of it is sometimes the more arduous that journey is, the more valuable that thing is, that the article, the actual, the record is, to, because you had to like seek it out, find it. And also you have, I don't think that this is not true today, but I had a feeling when I had like Joy Division Closer, like in Rockaway Beach, I was pretty confident I was the only person in the entire community that had this album. Like, there is a certain ownership that you get with that.
The value, isn't it? It's like you're like that magpie with the best piece of silver, because the next day I remember going to school with Nirvana Nevermind, and my mates were like, "Oh, my parents won't let me have that because it's got the naked baby on, and Territorial Pissings is on there." And I was like, "Well, I've got something worth something here. Like, I will let you copy this cassette if you give me Metallica the Black Album." Like, it felt like a real valuable piece of like weight.
Yes, and that's what it was. So, I think it's still, I think people do have just more in their taste, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much, like, because there's so much music available right now, like, it is absolutely true that there's something at this very moment that you and or I would both be knocked out by, that would fall in love with, but we just haven't come across it yet. And there might be someone that has it that would share it with us, and that is of value. You know what I mean? Because people send you a track or something like that, and sometimes that could be really not only a nice gift, or as or a gesture from a friend, but would lead you down a whole new rabbit hole, which is I think, trying to make it more contemporary, equivalent. But yeah, that kind of stuff was very powerful at the time.
It all changed for me when I saw music live, and it made me want to pick up a guitar and be in a band. And I could never sing, but I always just wanted to be in a band and be like Kurt Cobain. But one of the first shows I ever went to was Green Day on their Dookie tour. So again, I'm showing my age. But
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that there was any free musicians. I couldn't believe that Billy Joe Armstrong was making that much noise on one guitar. I kept looking around, kind of where's another guitarist? I just couldn't believe it, but it made the hairs on my neck stick up and my kind of rib shake with the bass from Mike, and Trey's drumming just blew my mind. But what was those first gigs that kind of had that effect for you?
Um, I mean, I kind of saw some big sort of shows like REM at Radio City Music Hall was one of the shows I saw. I saw U2 at Unforgettable Fire, and then I saw Husker Du, and then I started to get deeper into the punk world, and then once I started going to CBGBs, I saw Agnostic Front at CBGBs. Then really, honestly, I wasn't interested in any sort of like bigger bands. Yeah, I saw The Cure. Like there was a certain time in like the early 80s where, it was probably like 1984, 85, where I saw some like cool big concerts. But once I saw like the hardcore stuff, then I really made the connection of like well, I can do this. I'm gonna do it. You know what I
You
mean?
don't do things small, do you? Like the albums you listen to start with are literally some of the best albums in music history, and for concerts to see REM, The Cure,
Like,
U2, these bands are absolutely huge. It's not like you've just gone, oh, I went to see this little tiny band at, Battle of the Bands at school. You went epic.
well, I mean, I think I just was at that age at the time that these bands were like really happening, so I was kind of lucky in that sense. But they were all amazing. But like what I saw in those bands, um it just seemed like, they were popular. It wasn't like it was like a little show on the corner. You know what I mean? It was like these were big shows. So I think when I saw like when I first went to CBGBs and saw people my own age and in my own talent level, but I don't actually more I think about it. I even was very inspired by Musical Youth. You remember the band
Yes.
Musical Youth? Because they were my age or a little bit older. And I thought like, wow, these little kids are like in this cool band playing Saturday Night Live. Like, maybe I could do that. So, but I think it was really when I saw hardcore shows and just like this sort of, it was run by kids. It just didn't seem that hard to do it. It was more like accessible, like skateboarding. All you had to do is just like kind of just do it.
That's
Yeah.
why I think Silverchair appealed to me, because they were like 15 and Daniel Johns was writing stuff like Frog Stomp and Freak Show. And I was like, okay, so I can do this because they're at school still being able to go on tour with bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I couldn't get my head around the fact that, okay, like I can relate to this because I'm, only a couple of years younger than Daniel John. So I can be that person hopefully one day.
I think that kind of connecting to someone your age and something that you can relate to, I think is has a bit of an extra power. But I was, of course, I'm still like very influenced by like, yeah, like all the bands that I mentioned, REM, Cure, who are really having a moment right now for sure. Like,
I went to see them literally in the UK about 4 months ago. I never thought I'd ever get a chance to see them live, and they were phenomenal. Like a 2.5 hour set list, every song you could ever wish for. They were like they were 18 again with the same hunger and passion that they had when they started out.
amazing. Just like they have the songs and sorry, the power of my computer's starting to fade out.
No problem.
They've got such a huge, amazing catalog to rely on. I just feel like Robert Smith just has real like cool energy. You know what I mean? Like he's not like, fried by all the years of just doing this kind of very strange being Robert Smith.
Yeah, there is only one person that can be Robert Smith correctly, and
Yeah.
it's him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think being Robert Smith could be a hard gig, but he makes it. He does it right.
And effortlessly. Even just the
Yeah.
way he picks up another guitar on stage is the coolest way to be handed a guitar. So I don't know what it is about him, but every mannerism, every way he is, and then he sings like the most pure vinyl sound you could ever ask for. The voice and vocal live is crisper than you could ever wish for. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and he's not like which is maybe unfair, but a lot of like kind of these sort of like I don't want to say he's a celebrity, but like these sort of like really well-known guys, like his contemporaries, you know, they just get involved in all kinds of weird crap over the years. So then you start to associate them with this or that or the other, and it gets away from their music. Where Robert Smith has managed to like seem like always kind of be a cool guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but he does
you
it
know?
without
He does it
trying.
without trying. Yeah, not to for someone that wears that wears a lot of wears makeup and has this whole image and all that kind of stuff, and has a theatrical sense. He doesn't come off with a lot of pretense. He seems very down to earth and one of us, which is always very appealing.
With your music, kind of looking back at where we are today,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, do you ever sleep? Because as we're sitting here right now, Rival Schools have just released the 20th, which I can't believe it's 20th anniversary edition of one of my favorite albums of all time, United by Fate. You've done shows again with Quicksand and started releasing new music. Youth
Huh?
of Today has just wrapped up some shows, and Gorilla Biscuits have announced some shows. Like, are you trying to put yourself in an early grave, or are you just more hungry than you've ever been?
This year has been pretty busy, but it's just I guess my thinking is these are all my friend groups, and a lot of them are like intersectional, with sharing members in this band or that band, or we all kind of came up together. Um so it's not like I'm doing month-long tours with any one band or the other. It's just like I'm kind of going. I don't know, you have like your friend groups, you know what I mean? And you maybe like have some special thing once a year where you all get together and go someplace and do something cool. Like a lot of it is like that, like with Rival Schools, like I love these guys. We have a lot of great history. We're very creative people, and I really respect and love all those guys. Just have a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to this trip, and I just came off of a Gorilla Biscuit trip last week, and we just had a blast. And so I just feel kind of enriched by that. I mean, next year I don't know if I'll be able to do it as much because I am traveling quite a bit this year. But I have time at home as well, and I was off completely in January. I'm taking August off completely. So I think having 2 months off a year in a year is most people would be pretty psyched on that.
So do you try and really give yourself a better, healthier work-life balance? And obviously you're a father, you've got children. Is it a case of making sure you get the priorities right? Because obviously over 20 years that you've been performing in some of the best bands in the world, I'm surely at times it must have been, we need to keep going on tour, we need to keep going and playing shows. But now you can kind of take a step back and appreciate everything you've got.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really at a nice place where I'm doing all the things that I really want to do. And I there was a time like with Quicksand, I remember there was a time where we did like 300 shows in a year. That was hard and kind of like insane in a way. I would definitely attribute that kind of level of activity to like making us like kind of go crazy and breaking up the band, to be honest. But now we don't need to do that. You know what I mean? So we just kind of like find the opportunities and create this situations where everyone's like happy with what we're getting into, and it's more reasoned out. We aren't doing things just to do them at this point. It's something that we're like behind for artistic reasons, and also because we enjoy each other's company, and we like. It's not for everybody, but somehow I still really enjoy like traveling around the world, playing shows, and hanging out with my friends, meeting people, and I have friends all over the world, and it's a really nice way to keep those relationships, or keep those friendships, and I find it like to be really the riches of what I do.
I was literally about to say, do you look at it as like a wealth that you have all these friends all over the world that have come into your life and been there for so long because of your music? It's not about the money, it's not about the big houses, it's about having those friendships and relationships that have been built and strengthened via your music.
Yeah, man, I think you'd be crazy not to look at it that way. I mean, these are people that inspire me, that like are that look out for me, that just enrich my life, and it's wild that I feel have these super strong friendships with people that live, another all over the world, and have love and keep contact with, and all these different text threads and different jokes, and it's really very nice to have be floating on through the world with all that kind of love in your life.
And you've just said as well prior to this recording that you've obviously come back off playing some shows again with Rival Schools, and I've seen the videos on sort of Instagram and a few clips, but until I see it next week at 2000 Trees, I know it's not going to be the same. But the crowds went crazy. The album's 20 years old. It's genuinely a masterpiece, my top 5 album of all time. What do you think it is about that album that keeps it so timeless, that keeps it so iconic, that people beloved so much?
I mean, I can only talk about really like my connection to it. I mean, we just really, we made the best album that we could. Like, we really went into it. I think that there's a certain energy to the record, and that the time that and place that it came out, it held a certain special space for people. And I think what's cool to me is to see that isn't just the time and place. You know what I mean? Of course, like, if you were a certain age at the time that album came out, it was sort of in its own lane, and I think the people that connected to it really identified with that. But it's continued on to where we have fans that like are, weren't even, they were little kids when that album came out, and it wasn't until they were older that they discovered it, and that still has that energy to that speaks to people. And was interesting to me playing on these recent shows too, because we played a few songs from Petals as well, and a lot of the younger fans, like, that's their album. It's not United by Fate, it's Petals. And so it was just interesting to me to kind of catch like the lay of the land in Rival Schools world, and it was just really, I think there's just like a real positive feeling to it, that I think is kind of makes it special as well. I can't really put a finger on it, but maybe it's even in the logo with the guy and the girl running together, it just has some sort of like idealism or something that
It does.
that I think.
It reminds me of like the White Pony for Deftones. It's like iconic. It's just a very simple image, but we're talking about when that album was in people's lives. I'm now 41, so I was, 20, 21. I remember being at college, and we talked earlier about having that kind of wealth of, I've got Nirvana, Nevermind. I was the kid that had the Rival Schools t-shirt in green with the white logo and the two kids running. And that felt like, where the fuck did you get that from? And I'm like, I'm not telling you, like, this is my baby. Like, this is my find. Like, I'm not just giving you this on a plate. You need to go and earn it. And, even when I listen to it now, it takes me back to those days, probably when I didn't have to worry about a mortgage or an electric bill or gas bill, but also the way it's recorded, it sounds timeless. I listen to it now and it still sounds like it could have been recorded yesterday. And that's a compliment to obviously the engineers and the producer, but it does sound flawless.
I mean, I can't really take credit for it, but I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that the recording at the time, like, I was struggling with it because the producer, Luke Eben, had come from sort of like more of a pop background. And we thought, oh, well, let's, instead of making like the indie kind of record that we would be sort of more expected from us, or would be the more kind of regular tact for us, we said, oh, let's fuck around and do something with more pop guy and see where that takes us. But when we were doing it, I was like, oh man, this is going to be really well recorded. You know what I mean? Like, and that kind of scared me a little bit, because I'm coming from this sort of like indie kind of lo-fi kind of aesthetic. But in fact, when it's all done, I think that's a big part of it as well. Like, it sounds really good, and that it's held up. So we all did the work, but credit to Luke Eben and for making sure it sounded right, and Rich Costi, who mixed it, who's a very he's gone on to be very sought after mixer, and he did a great job on it as well.
Does it still feel surreal that you're going to be playing these shows in the UK and at festivals, and everyone's going to lose their mind when you play stuff like Use for Glue again, and just how far it's taken people? People will come and tell you it's changed their life. People will tell you they listened to it when they lost a loved one, or they had a relationship breakup, or they may have got married to it. This album hits
Mm.
so many people on different levels, and you're still celebrating it now. It's not like you gave up and then just went away. You're still playing this album, and people are still, like you said, there's new fans coming on board. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't. I obviously, I think every time I make a record, anytime I get involved in something, I'm going for classics. Like I want it to be to hold up over time. And the only way you do that is just like, you know, doing the extra work, kind of the detailing and all that kind of stuff, and just giving it your best effort. But you can't, you can. You kind of just get lucky when a record like that just kind of finds its audience, you know what I mean, and resonates with it, like that. It's a magic thing, you know what I mean? Like you want it to happen, but I don't know if I got my finger on the secret. It just kind of, the world's just got to kind of open up somehow, and with this record, it's amazing. It's surreal. Sure, yeah. I mean, it's just really, I'm just very grateful, and I love the record too. So it's
It's a good job, really.
yeah. I mean, it's awesome. Honestly, there's not too much downside. I don't like going to the airport. I'm not a big fan of that whole rigmarole. But the rest of it is great. I'm hanging out with my friends, playing music for people that love it, and I'm one of them. So it's a nice time.
So when you guys are playing, and we mentioned 2000 Trees and all these events, are you still writing as a band? Do you guys have a jam when you're doing your sound checks and have a few ideas that you're sharing? Do you believe that we might get more Rival Schools music in the near future?
Well, I couldn't really speak to that too much, but we're all super creative guys, and there's never a sound check that goes by without some sort of cool jam coming up. So I believe we have it in us, but for the moment, we're very focused on just this is kind of a very wonderful sort of victory lap experience. So I'm going to relish in that.
I feel like you're teasing me slightly, just a little bit.
Rhetoric, my right there.
And away from music, I follow you on Instagram. I see your kind of life through the lens of social media, but you're really big on, looking after yourself and self-care, and, people being mentally secure, and even the diet of your life, and really taking care. Do you think, and I've had quite a few bands on, but people are afraid still in this world to kind of put their hand up and say, I'm struggling, because I don't know what it is, but when I do to my friends, I'm always blown away by the response that all my guy friends are like, me too. I'm so fucking glad you said, because I felt like I was wrong for saying it. But more people should kind of put their hand up and admit when things aren't great.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's over time. I think that's become a much more open in our society. I mean, I can say in America for sure it has. When I was a young man, like going to a shrink had like this like sort of this kind of like old kind of Freudian kind of like some serious like darkness or something kind of uh connection to it, something bourgeois about it as well. But I think now it's like there's an acknowledgement that I think COVID for sure highlighted it, that modern life is crazy. You know what I mean? You're bombarded with so many different kinds of you know, ads and pressures and expectations that are I think are unreasonable or and certainly unhealthy for people to pretend like it's not affecting them. And I think you do that at your own peril. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say that well, everyone should just like have a good cry and go to a shrink. I'm not even saying that. You know what I mean? To me, like, I try to monitor my own, I try to monitor my time, you know, in a sense. And I think like if I'm eating well, if I'm exercising in some way, uh that it helps to it helps with my like anxiety about whatever it may be. You know what I mean? And I think it's normal to feel anxiety in this world where you're just inundated with shit. You know what I mean? And it's like it could be completely overwhelming because that inundation is actually part of what's keeping the society moving, is stressing people out. You know what I mean? So that they'll spend money on this or that. You know what I mean? And you know, there's all kinds of different critiques to take, but I think in terms of for myself, I like going for a run. You know what I mean? I enjoy it. I love like seeing the people. I love when it's over. You know what I mean? I feel like I did something, so that something else comes across my plate. I feel like, hey, I just went for that run. I didn't really feel like it at the beginning of it, but at the end of it, when it was over, I felt really good. So now, like, what else is coming at me? What else is coming at me that I don't really feel like dealing with, that I can accomplish? You know what I mean? And you're building that strength. I think mentally, physically, and I think when it comes to like talking to someone, and I'm saying shrink because it's like sort of like, I guess it's like a old timey pejorative almost of healthcare, mental health care, but like, I think there's a certain like, and maybe there's an American thing, but like admitting any sort of weakness, is like yeah, it's just kind of frowned upon. You know what I mean? It's like the rough individual. And I think that's just a bunch of bullshit, really. Like, people are ignoring their health, mental, physical, and stuff like that at their own peril. You know what I mean? It's like that's part of your operating system. You know what I mean? Like how you uh how you travel through life. Your vehicle is your body, but also it's your mind. And I don't think like everyone necessarily needs that, but I don't. Why should anyone feel stigma about seeking medical or sorry, mental health care, or just being communicative too? Like, you don't necessarily need to see a professional, but like, do you have someone in your family that you feel like, or do you have a friend that you feel like you can talk to? A lot of people are super isolated. You know what I mean? And feel shame, so for being isolated, which makes it worse, because everyone's kind of supposed to be like, oh, hey, here are, maybe that's why I boosted myself in some situation where I do have these friends all over the world. Like, I feel like I'm in a tree that I can many branches to grab onto before I'd ever hit the bottom. You know what I mean? But ultimately it's within you, and I think that it lies upon you to kind of create your own, stable, healthy universe. I'm maybe trying to make a point over and over again, but just like take care of yourself. It's
Well,
not a
yeah,
bad thing.
self-care is so important, and we're in a society where sometimes we'll put everything else before ourselves, everything all the time. Life is so manic, every response, even on your phone, the
Yeah,
notifications, it's impossible to avoid anxiety. I think it's
yeah,
impossible. Your job's always about achieving more, stretching you to do more. You can definitely try and double it this month or this, and it's like it's not healthy. And then you're getting home and everything's going up in cost, so you need to stretch yourself to try and accomplish more with your financial life. And I think it's genuinely impossible to not suffer. And when you talked about running, and I know you're a big advocate for fitness, a lot of my friends now are getting into running, just because it's free. You can get your shoes on and just
yeah,
go and be outside and be in the great outdoors, and straight away there's fresh air, so you're feeling healthy and you're seeing the world. But there's a social element. In the UK, we have a park run every Saturday that people can go to. It doesn't matter where you are, 9 o'clock every Saturday. any park in the UK, there'll be people doing a run together, and you make friends and you listen and you share playlists and you talk about bands or you talk about what you're up to. That surely is healthy instantly.
For sure. I was just with a friend of mine from the UK was visiting, and we went on this run in this group run out in Brooklyn, and you're running with like 30, 40 people in the streets in Brooklyn. You
That sounds
know,
amazing.
it is so fun. And when you run with 30 or 40 people in the streets together, you plug into your like primal, it's powerful to run with
Yeah.
that many people. You know what I mean? And you run faster and you're just energized. You're just energized. And that is lies in such stark contrast to the way people are living a lot of their lives, which is just like, looking at their computer at home, trying to keep up, like you said, produce more, hustle more, return more emails, be on that, you know what I mean? And like you're talking about texts, like you're getting hit on email, you're getting hit on text, you know what I mean? Like you send a text like, oh shit, was that clear what I just said? You know what
It's
I mean?
so
Like,
true.
and then or like I wrote someone had emailed me and I hadn't emailed back in a few days, so I started to write the draft and then I sent half a draft, so then I was like, oh god, now I gotta by accident, you know what
Sounds
I
like
mean?
my head is speaking out loud right now.
Yeah, and you're just in this like, it's funny that the word cringe is such a big word in our culture right now because you're constantly cringing. It's just like that's our one of our go-to emotions in the modern world. So like if I'm out there running with 34 people, 30, 40 people in the streets of New York, running at my top level and just feeling that power, like I'm plugged back into my like hunter gatherer self and I'm like out of this bullshit. You know what I mean?
I'm got this image in my head of like Rocky, when he's running with a group of people and they all follow
Yeah.
him, and it's like he's becoming the champion of the world again. It might sound really cheesy, but the adrenaline and the passion and the drive and just the oomph you get, there's no room for cringe when you're doing that.
No, that's human connection too. Like everything in your mind is engaged, your body's engaged. Um, and then it can be hard, but you're just mentally going like, I'm not quitting. You know what I mean? I'm not going to quit. I'm going to go through this bullshit. I know there's an end. You know what I mean? But I'm going to like, obviously you don't want to hurt yourself. You have to. That's another part
Yeah,
of
you
it.
don't want to fall over and like have a heart
Yeah,
attack. But yeah.
but as long as you're monitoring that, like not in a kind of psycho way, like you're gonna be fine in truth. And however it is, you don't need to be Rocky. You don't have to be at the front. You don't need to win the damn race, but you're participating. You're working with yourself. You're telling yourself like, I can do this, but you're also empowered by everyone around you. I find that amazing and at a stark contrast and relief from just like, and I've got a very chill existence. Like no one's like, if I don't do something or whatever, if I don't produce some sort of thing, like that's just like, no one's like yelling at me. You know what I mean? It's my own thing. So it's very nice, but I need that relief, you know what I mean? So when I do go in the running groups, you meet people from all different kinds of doing all kinds of different things in their lives. And it's really awesome that you can get outside of your little friend group or your little, bubble, quote unquote, like to meet people that are, like you, but are totally in a different realm. I love that as well. So I think like, I think that kind of like just say running, which I do and I've done for decades, and yoga as well is another really especially as you kind of get older, making sure all your everything's working. You know what I mean? Your arms, your legs, your ankles, your toes, all this stuff that it's still functioning. Because if you let your body like if you tell your body like, hey, we're not doing anything, let's just chill, your body will be like, cool.
Yeah, it's so true.
and it'll just atrophy. And then before you know it, you're like, shit, man, like actually I don't want to walk the stairs anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what
All the little
happens.
things become big things, like walking all the way downstairs to the toilet and then pegging out the washing and walking to the other back, to the garden. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, it just piles up on you. But whatever. It's not really like I'm not like some sort of like self-help. I mean, I don't mean to like project that kind of thing because I really just only to the degree that like I find it good for me, that I enjoy it,
But
and
there's
that it's helpful.
positive, that something good comes from that, because even just talking to you now, when this has finished, I feel pumped, and that's just from talking about it. I want to go and put the Rocky Four soundtrack on and with my AirPods,
Do anything.
and now run all the way down the street as far as I can go, which wouldn't be very far, but it does definitely have an impact. So you know,
Well, a walk is enough. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like going
Well,
for
we've
a
got
walk.
dogs, so me and my wife and the two girls, we go for walks, and we love adventures and discovering new places and just being outside. And randomly, if you suddenly see a fox or a badger, or it's incredible. We live in the countryside, and I never take it for granted. It's like the biggest change I've had in my life in 2 years is moving from the city to the countryside, and I'd never go back. I absolutely love the great outdoors.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I lived in during COVID. I lived in upstate New York. I have a nice little house there, and we stayed there during the whole pandemic. It was the first time that I ever watched like how like when the spring kind of came and like watching each like plant, each little critter like kind of pop up its head, watching nature just kind of like open up and then and then pass away as well. You don't see that in the city in the same way,
It's magical, and I've always took it for granted my whole life, and now I'll sit there for ages and just look at, I don't know, like a tree and see acorns and be like, how beautiful is that? And then go back the next week and be like, oh my God, they're starting to. It sounds so ridiculous. People are listening now, like,
no, it's real, dude. It's real.
but
People
it's
gonna,
true.
I think it's like it's absolutely real and it's I fell in love with it the same way.
What I do on the podcast, and I've asked this to 280 guests now, and I think I'm really intrigued because I have no idea what you'll pick, but every person that comes on chooses the last song that's played. So once me and you've finished this conversation, it's all edited and out there for the world to listen to. The guest that comes on the podcast chooses the last piece of music that's played, like the outro music, but it can be
Okay.
any song by any band, by anyone in the world, or a piece of music that means a lot to you. But when I ask the question, what's the song that kind of comes to your head and your heart before anything else? And I think you'll struggle because, hey, your life is music. You're in a number of bands. Your life has been shaped because of bands. But is there one song that sticks out above all the rest?
Um,
Talk about throwing you at the deep end and not giving you any advance warning, hey?
yeah, yeah. I mean, okay, we're talking about The Cure, so maybe that just popped up in my head. In Between Days is an amazing song. That's something that I probably played out like a million times, and still sounds great to me. I actually covered it recently. I mean, it's probably up there with probably another 10 or 20 songs, but that's the first one that popped in my mind. There's something about like it's just it's just awesome. I mean, it's just really Cure, like the kind of I like the Cure have a lot of different lanes, but I really love that kind of like happy poppy side of the Cure. But I feel that there's a darkness on Head of the Door album, that a sort of happy sad combo that
It is.
hits
When you were saying then about the happy and the upbeat and the nice sort of poppy sound, it's also got that overtone of the whole record as well that makes me also quite depressed and down, but in a good way. Like it's like you said, it's real. It's got a bit of both.
gives it weight, you know what I mean?
That's
Like
it. The word weight. Yeah.
if everything was like, oh my God, Friday, I'm in love, it's so great. There has to be like, and I love that song, but In Between Days like has a certain sadness to it that just means that's like, something so beautiful you could cry about it. You know what I mean?
It's
Like,
so true.
or
And then the reality is Friday I'm in love, but Monday's going to come and you're going to go back to work soon. So there's the real side.
yeah, I mean, it's all, I mean, when he can. just deliver those singles that are just so goddamn good and yet have all this other really, really cool, kind of like disintegration kind of, you know, he just has these other lanes that are great. But I don't know. In Between Days is a great one. What's another one that came to mind? Oh, Dreaming by Blondie.
Nice.
Uh, that's one of my favorite songs as a kid. I think it has a similar thing. It's got this sort of like Heroes by Bowie. There's something about this sort of like sweet sadness that connects with me.
You've picked some absolute classics. And weirdly, none of those three tracks you've mentioned have been picked by anyone else, even though we're at nearly 300 episodes.
Okay, good.
Are we going to go with The
I mean,
Cure? That feels the most natural because we've spent quite a lot of time today
it's just
worshipping them and
I mean, I just
appreciating
feel
them.
that, yeah, they're just really having a moment. I guess if I think of like it's just that emotion, I think to me most is the most big, like where I need that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I love AC/DC as well. Like they have some songs that get me freaking psyched, or all kinds of different like punk bands or something. But it's those kind of songs, these sort of sad, sweet songs. I Will Dare by the Replacements.
I love this.
Um,
This could go on for another hour of just
you know what I mean?
song
There's something
choices.
in those songs that are like that I've mentioned that I don't know, they make me feel about like being in love and not any particular person, but just like I guess that's kind of like the best emotion, really.
It couldn't have gone any better today. And Emma will tell you this. I've tried and wanted to have you on this podcast since I started. There's a list of names I've always tried to get on, and times sometimes just it doesn't match up sometimes, and times are very strange. And obviously, everyone had a 2 year period of pause. But
And
I'm
Anthony
so
Hopkins is always crowding up the space too, so you got to get
god
it.
damn, yeah, he's so famous. But
I mean, you know how he is.
I truly mean this from the bottom of my heart. I can't express how grateful I am for your time. This time next week, we will be in the same field, ready to see you play, which is going to be unbelievable. I can't wait to see it in the flesh in front of me. And thank you so much for your time, because honestly, it's one of those ticks now that I'm like top 10 guests. One other is now got that big green tick against.
Thanks so much, Mark. A pleasure talking with you, and looking forward to hopefully get a chance to meet when you're there. Like,
Yeah, I'll be backstage all
yeah,
weekend doing interviews, and I've got about 11 or 12 scheduled already. I try and do a special for like Slam Dunk and Download Festival and all the big UK festivals, but 2000 Trees has a real special place in my heart. It's the right size, it's magical, there's not too many people, and it just feels like one big family. So I'm sure we can sort out a drink and to shake your hand, and yeah, it'd be awesome.
love it, love it. All right, man. Well, we'll see you then.
So there it is. There's my interview with me, and I mean this word, the absolute legend, Walter himself. He's responsible for making some of the best bands and best albums out there, and it was such a pleasure to sit down and talk to him. And as I'm sitting here right now, I'm getting ready to go to 2000 Trees, and I'm going to get to see them live, and I can't wait. Honestly, they're the band I'm looking forward to the most, and to hear songs from United by Fate played live is going to be a dream come true. I can't wait. If you've enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you have, please go on markandme.com, because on there there's links to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and please share it. It costs nothing to do. This podcast is always going to remain free, and all I ask is you to hit that share button, or if you're on Instagram, put it as part of your stories. It really goes a long way, and even just hitting the like button helps the algorithm and gets more people to see it. This is how Mark and Me gets the name out there. I'm a one-man team, you know the score by now. I don't have a manager or production team or marketing budget. It's all about word of mouth. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please take the time to share it. I also do have a Patreon account. This helps the running of Mark and Me every day with sites like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, which all cost me money each and every month. So if you want to give a little bit back, there's a link on markandme.com. But don't worry, for that money, I make sure you get an exclusive episode every month. You get a welcome pack with badges, stickers, and so much more. A newsletter each and every month. And honestly, I'm going to be upping it and giving you even more giveaways in the next few weeks. Right, I think that's about it, apart from giving a quick shout out to the Folio Society, another huge sponsor of this podcast, an amazing group of people bringing out the best books out there. So go on foliosociety.com, see what you like, and honestly, they've got some amazing stuff. I want to give a big shout out to Emma. You heard at the start, because of her this interview happened. I'm in debt with you already about previous guests, so add this on to the previous debt, and I hope one day I can pay it off. You're an amazing person, an incredible friend, and thank you so much for making this happen. Right, I'm going to go and get ready for 2000 Trees. I hope you all have an amazing few days, and then I'll be back with even more live specials from the festival, my normal episodes, and so much more. So take care, and I'll speak to you all very soon.